Hello everybody and welcome to the Friday edition of Video Clips, and just a couple of announcements. Summer semester starts soon and we're offering some great stuff. We offer great stuff all the time, but the Diet and Lifestyle Intervention course is a 15-module course that a lot of doctors, nurses, dietitians, health coaches take. It's a phenomenal overview of the type of work that we do here: informed decision-making, diet and lifestyle change. And then as part of the Nutrition Educator Program, which is our alternative to dietetics, it's an intense science-based what dietetics education should really be like. Nutrition and cancer, dietary intervention in employer and other group settings, and psychology too, the psychology of communication, teaching skills, and problem solving. So remember all the free stuff we offer, career training, all that. And if you want to be a subscriber to the newsletter so you can get all the past COVID articles, all of this, my email address is pampopper@msn.com. All right, so on Fridays I talk about consequences. I think it's important to consider carefully the collateral damage that's being done by these terrible people and their agenda. And I'm all for saving lives, but if you kill more people than you save, then this is not a good plan. If you look at the risks and benefits analysis for what has been done, it's atrocious. It's atrocious, and how anybody in public health can defend it is beyond me. Well, they can't defend it. They have to make stuff up in order to defend it. That's a lot of what I've been talking about. All right, I live on Long Island where everything is very strange. I have a 9-year-old son who's on the autism spectrum, which has made life tremendously more difficult for him. He says things like, "I don't feel like I am on Earth. Close the windows, we'll get sick, and I hate my life," throughout the day. I won't leave him alone in any room in our house longer than a few minutes. He'll get lost inside his negative thoughts. I don't want something extremely bad to happen. I have explained the difference between airborne and viral infections to him, and after that conversation, it took another month to get him to go for a bike ride with me, which we normally love to do. He was so anxious we had to stop at 20 minutes. He had a meltdown. My son needed us to go home where it's safe. The heightened anxiety and fear is so much more real to him than I could have ever imagined. Him listening to your data, me, has seemed to help some. He asked to listen to the positive corona data. Thank you for that. Another person writes, "We should not be scared of COVID-19, just be scared of government. They threaten people with fines in jail and isolation. The crime is not doing what you're told. It's now a crime to go out of your house unless you adhere to the strictest rules and regulations. Who said living in China was tough? We've become just as tough in the UK. My granddaughter has a partner with cystic fibrosis. She, their 2-year-old son, and of course the guy with CF are scared stiff to leave. We'll be fined," she wailed. "The fact he has CF has become a prison for the whole family. No one is free to make sensible choices. I suggested they could make it to his car and go sit watching the sea. She was horrified. They live within 200 yards of the beach. We'll be fined," she says. "It seems all sense has been lost and control is the order of the day. Why did we fight the Nazis? We have the same ideas instituted by an authoritarian government who wring their hands claiming it's not their fault and it's in everybody's best interest. As you say, they write the silly rules for themselves. Newest idea is to allow a maid to do the cleaning in your house, but you can't have relatives allowed. Who has a maid? Well, the wives of the politicians, of course. I must stop sounding off. I'm becoming angry and it doesn't do any good. Like you, I'll end up in jail as a troublemaker." Yes, because the rich having the maids come in is very important. Sort of like last week when I talked about Obama playing golf at the Robert Trent Jones golf course. You know, he is not subject to the rules. He's another emperor kind of guy. I mean, the rules are for the little people, you guys, not for the politicians and their folks, right? All right, my small business and the small business my mother runs have both been severely impacted by the draconian measures that have been put in place here in New York. We live in one of the 5 boroughs of New York City. My business is Pilates and Reiki healing, 21 years. My mom has been a hairdresser for 50 years. Both of us are not allowed to open our doors and don't see any light at the end of the tunnel very soon, considering the manner that they're handling everything. I have 2 children that are in graduation years, one from the 8th grade and one from high school. Their graduations, proms, end-of-year celebrations, and socials have all been canceled along with their sports seasons. I have clients that are doctors. They say the hospitals are empty and their practices are empty, and doctors are being fired left and right. There are large conglomerate medical institutions not paying rent to the landlords who are often small business owners. All of these things you already know, but I wanted to share to further support the realities you've been bringing to light on your video clips. All right, I wanted to share my outrage. I'm from Delaware. My daughter is 7, has to have an orthodontic appliance put in her mouth to widen her jaw because of teeth crowding, and she was never able to get it back in March because the office closed down like everything else. They're now opening back up, but their new procedures are that the parents will text the office when they arrive in the parking lot. They'll reply back when we can enter the building. We have to have face masks on our children, even though the governor says only kids under age 12 need face masks. Have to sign a consent form at the door to allow the child to be seen alone in the office. They're not allowing parents in the office. They've closed the waiting room, and when they're done with the child, they text the parent who waits in the car for the child to be delivered. This is insane. I'm literally melting down over this tonight. I emailed them back and said, no way my child will ever be without me in a doctor's office. She cites a pedophile doctor here in Delaware, down in the southern part of the state, that molested thousands of children years ago. And it's not just that. A good friend of mine in Florida, only one time this happened, the doctor said he wanted to talk to her daughter alone, and she allowed it, and he told her to ignore her mother's advice about not getting the HPV vaccine and allow him to give it to her. And when she told her mom, my friend, in the car, she stormed back into the building and said, we're never coming back here again. So I don't think it's safe to leave children alone with doctors. I wouldn't either. So this is, how would any parent be okay with this? And so this woman goes on to say she mailed the governor, and my child really needs the appliances. The teeth crowding is obstructing her breathing. I know. Thanks for your video clips. I share them with everyone I can, even though most people that I know are sheeples. I'm so angry. And again, who supports this? Tell me I want somebody to go on TV and say, I think that minor children should be taken out of the house to a church to be dealt with or live with social workers who amuse them because they've been exposed to somebody through contact tracing. I want somebody to go on television and say that is a great idea. And personally, I would not mind if my minor children were taken away from me to be held in a church where I can't see them and don't know what's going on. And tell me who wants to let their child be seen alone by a doctor these days. All right. Next one. I was excited when you mentioned Governor Cuomo early in the week. We like to call him King Cuomo because throughout this pandemic, he's issued more than 260 executive decisions without consulting the state Senate. It's pretty clear he has presidential ambitions. What a great president he would make, because then we could all live like this. Wouldn't that be fabulous if Governor Cuomo were president? Okay, I would vote for my shoe. I would vote for my cat. I would vote for your dog. I would vote for anybody but one of these people. I am someone who has suffered from anxiety and depression since my early college days. I don't handle change very well, so naturally this national conversation about a new normal isn't exactly sitting well with me. And by the way, we're not going to settle for a new normal. No. I said last week, I will fight this till I take my last breath. I'm a pretty sturdy, determined person. I digress. I have had at least 4 anxiety attacks since the beginning of the crisis. I've suffered from wild mood swings. At first I was upset about the erosion of my spring traditions, going to baseball games and attending festivals. However, I'm more concerned with losing my job now. After years, I finally got a writing position with a local community college. They were kind enough to bring me on in the middle of the crisis as a remote worker, but during a recent meeting, our division chairwoman announced there would be significant budget cuts if we didn't get help from the state. She didn't mention staff cuts, but I've raised the notion to my immediate boss, who won't give me a clear answer. I hate uncertainty, so naturally I worry every day about losing the dream job I worked for years to get. What did Andrew Cuomo say to those worried about their jobs being taken away? Get an essential job. What kind of advice is that, you nitwit moron, god-awful human being who belongs as ruler of a socialist country? He also minimized mental health issues and domestic violence, saying they were bad but not death. And then he preaches, it isn't about you. The effects of, I'm personally sick of being told it isn't about you. To an extent, I think human beings need to be selfish and protect their self-interest, their livelihoods, and their families. The effects of the pandemic are even worse for my parents. My father suffers from cancer of unknown primary And thankfully, he's been able to keep doing chemotherapy. However, he wants to go out and do things with friends and family while he's healthy enough to do it. My mother is a high school math teacher who has had to adopt to online teaching. She's worked hard to keep her students engaged, but recently she found out the school district is going to pass every student for the final marking period, regardless of how much work they got done. This is insanely frustrating for her, and she's worried about both school not returning in the fall and what Bill and Melinda Gates will do to our state's education system, not to mention being jabbed with vaccines that include a tattoo. That's on the schedule of things to be done to us. All right, so here's comes from a hospice nurse. Yes, it affects my work life because the rules keep changing. Today I must wear an ineffective mask, company-provided eyewear that is ineffective, and gloves every time I go into my currently 5 facilities to see my patients. I have to call first, and if they answer, I must get my patient's temperature. At the door of the facilities, all locked down except for workers and medical personnel, I must fill out a questionnaire and have my temperature taken. Some facilities demand medical personnel, if they've been to any other buildings, wear full PPE. The National Guard is in my town testing everyone, employees and residents in hot buildings, assisted living facilities, and long-term care buildings that have COVID-positive patients. It's like a scene from Schindler's List, all of it because of a virus that is flu-like. It's insane. I have an end-stage Alzheimer's patient who's refusing to eat ever since his wife was not allowed to visit at mealtimes. He's dying unnecessarily, and there's nothing I can do but blame the people who started all of this because their power and their agenda, and they don't care. The controlling agency told facilities their employees can't work 2 jobs, so many employees had to choose, and facilities lost a lot of employees, so the patients end up losing out. I understand the ruling because we heard of a worker who knew he was COVID positive, but he was going back and forth to 2 different facilities. But the bottom line is the whole long-term care and assisted living facilities management system is in shambles. They're raping the system, hiring uncaring, unhygienic people who are there for the money. I've witnessed them sleeping during their shifts, and when reported, still keep their job. It's disgusting and shameful. And then another person writes, the situation with people turning on each other to report their noncompliance, that's very familiar to me as I grew up in a communist country. And this is the way. How much further ahead can I get if I report my neighbor? I absolutely hated that, and it was one of the reasons why I decided to emigrate and give up my whole extended family so I wouldn't feel the frustration of that system. Never would I have believed that in my lifetime, only 3 months, the United States can become so similar. Americans are fortunate as they have been born into free society, and maybe that's the reason they don't recognize how quickly they're being stripped of their rights. And this writer is absolutely right. We are every day in parts of the country disintegrating, degenerating into what makes the communists and the Nazis look mild by comparison. And you might wonder why I say that. Well, you know, the Nazis isolated groups of people they hated, all right? And that was pretty despicable. I don't know anybody. I fortunately don't come in contact with many people who defend the Nazis. But you know, these people hate everybody. They hate little children. They hate all races. They hate all religions. They hate people. To do the things that I'm talking about in this, you gotta despise people and have such callous disregard and disrespect for the human race that it goes beyond description. I mentioned earlier in the week, I would like to see Nuremberg trials. And I would like to see the snitches and the people who aided and abetted these god-awful people to pay the price too. So I keep track of the snitches. You know, I belong to one of those groups, neighborhood groups that they started online. And the snitches are very proud of themselves, by the way. They get online and brag about who they turned in. And I do take their names because one day, one fine day, when it will be time for all of this to be washed out, these people will pay for what they did. And I think so will these governors and our friend Bobby Rush, who thinks we should all be tested. And I mean, he's the guy in Congress I talked about earlier this week. These are terrible, terrible people. And one thing I think the hate mail has really come down on my email every week. I think one of the reasons is that, first of all, the data as it accumulates every week becomes increasingly hard to ignore. But I think the other thing is the consequences of this and how bad and worse it gets every week. I think that I would like to think that most people would feel uncomfortable saying, yeah, I'm all for that. I think that an Alzheimer's patient who won't eat without his wife, you should just let him die. I'm waiting for one of you to write that to me, right? Because that just doesn't matter. As long as we prevent somebody from getting COVID, even though all the data shows that that's really not a problem, let the person die. I mean, this is I don't know. I guess I'm at a loss for words to explain what would allow somebody to get caught up in this and do it. But I guess if we look at World War II, a lot of people thought Hitler was swell. And a lot of people got on board and helped him do what he did, you know? And I guess that's what we're seeing here. I never thought it would come to this country, but it has. All right, as usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it. Feel free to email me at pampopper@msn.com. If you want to get our newsletter, sign up for our free stuff, participate in our classes, talk about careers, spend time with our therapist. Believe me, it's helped me. pampopper@msn.com. Be safe, be sane, and I will be back to you next week with more news.